Welcome back to the Classy Zombie, the podcast where my wife drags me into the darkest corners of true crime and somehow still makes me laugh before the theme song is even over.
That's the job description, honey. Horror and humor. It's the brand.
Is it though? Or is it Rose ruins date night by reading me murder Wikipedia pages?
Same thing.
That's fair. I'm Michael, 32 years as a clinician. I thought I was going to say 32 years old, but that's a dream. 25 plus years as an appraiser, and now apparently a podcaster.
And I'm Rose, about 20 years in the medical field, and currently as a nurse practitioner, and his wife, which is honestly the harder job of the two.
And this is the Classy Zombie, where today we're talking about a case that sat cold for over 40 years, the murder of 15-year-old John McCabe.
41 years to be exact. And before we get into it, quick heads up for everybody. This one involves the death of a teenager. So if that's not where your head's at today, no judgment. Go listen to us talk about our week instead. We've got plenty of that too.
We really do.
Okay, so this is September 1969, Tewksbury, Massachusetts, a quiet town, the kind of place where everybody kind of knows everybody.
The good old days.
The good old days, allegedly. So there's this dance at the Knights of Columbus Hall. Totally normal teenage Saturday night, dancing, gossip, probably somebody's older brother sneaking beer in from the parking lot.
That's classic.
John McCabe is there. He's 15. By all accounts, a sweet, unassuming kid, loved tinkering with engines like his dad, once brought home an injured goose because he couldn't stand to leave it hurt.
Okay, that detail's gonna wreck me a little.
I know, just keep it in your back pocket, it's going to matter later. Not for a twist, just because it tells you who this kid really was. So the dance wraps up and John starts heading home. He doesn't have a ride, so he's walking, maybe hoping to catch a lift.
And he never makes it.
He never makes it. His parents wait up. He doesn't come home. They start driving around looking for him themselves.
Which is its own kind of horrible, like the not knowing part.
Right. And the next morning, some kids are cutting through a vacant lot on Maple Street in Lowell, Massachusetts, and they find him.
Oh no.
Yeah, he'd been tied up, hands, feet, a rope around his neck, and his eyes and mouth were taped shut. The medical examiner later ruled it asphyxiation.
40 years, Rose. I mean, that's most of a lifetime for this to just sit there unsolved.
It's brutal. And here's the thing that always gets me about these cold cases. It's not that nobody looked. Police talked to dozens of teenagers right away. They zeroed in on a guy named Walter Shelley pretty quickly because he drove a car that matched one seen near the scene.
But it didn't stick.
It didn't stick. No solid forensics. Nobody talking. This is 1969. No DNA testing, nothing like that. So the case just goes cold, ice cold.
So what actually happened? Do we know now?
We do, eventually, and it's such a small, stupid reason for it to have gone this far. Word was that John had been flirting with Shelley's girlfriend at the dance.
That's it?
That's it. The theory, which later got confirmed, was that a group of older teens decided to teach him a lesson for it.
Which is such a chilling phrase, by the way. Teach him a lesson. Like there's ever a version of that ends okay.
Never. So the story goes they grabbed him as he was walking home, drove him around, roughed him up, and it escalated into them tying him up and leaving him in that lot. They left him there. Whether they meant for it to end in his death or whether it just spiraled out of control and nobody wanted to admit it, that's honestly still part of the debate around this case.
So who actually gets caught? And how long does it take?
41 years. In 2000, John's dad gets a tip from one of John's old friends pointing at the jealousy angle, but again, no hard evidence and nothing sticks. Then in 2007, a new DA comes in. Local police push for a fresh look at the file, and eventually detectives land on a name: Edward Allen Brown.
And Brown talks?
Brown eventually talks. In 2011, a detective named Linda Coughlin gets him to confess his involvement, and he says he was there the night Walter Shelley and Michael Ferrera killed John.
So three names, finally, after 4 decades.
3 names: Shelley, Ferrera, and Brown, all arrested in April 2011. Shelley and Ferrera charged with murder, Brown with manslaughter for cooperating.
I have to imagine that's an insane phone call for John's parents to get.
His mom actually said something like she'd waited 41 years for that closure, and she'd never stopped believing it would come. And his dad, Bill, he's a whole story on his own. He kept a journal his entire life, documenting John's story and every scrap of the investigation, pushing police for decades not to let it go cold.
That's the kind of quiet, stubborn love that doesn't show up in headlines.
It really doesn't, but it matters a lot for where this story ends up, so hang on to that too.
Okay, on that note, can we take a breather? Because that's heavy. And also, I need to publicly process something that happened this weekend.
Here we go.
We went to a garage sale, a completely normal, harmless garage sale, and Rose came home with an American Girl doll.
In my defense, she was in mint condition.
Oh, God. She's not our girl. We don't have a girl. We have a marriage and a podcast about murder.
She was $5, Michael. $5 for a doll that probably sold for 100 new. I wasn't leaving her there.
You say that like the doll was in danger.
We might have been. You don't know her life.
Okay, well, speaking of that doll and every other treasure we've been hoarding, this is actually a good excuse to remind everybody we're running some whatnot auctions this coming week.
We are. If you want a shot at outbidding me for questionable garage sale finds, or you just want to see what other true crime adjacent junk we've collected, find us on Whatnot. We're the classy zombie deals.
The classy zombie deals. Say it 3 times fast.
Don't do that to them.
Okay, fair. What else is going on? Didn't you get some big news this week?
Oh, yes. So my sisters and I are officially going to Disney World later this year.
That is huge. This has been someday for how long now?
Years, actual years of we should really do this someday texts, and it's finally locked in,
I'm so happy for you. Also, slightly terrified of what 3 unsupervised sisters in a theme park is going to look like.
as you should be.
Are you doing the ear thing? Please tell me you're doing the ear thing.
Obviously, I'm doing the ears, Michael. What kind of question is that?
Just checking. Okay, and speaking of good news, I have to brag for a second because my birthday dinner this week was genuinely amazing.
It really was.
All the guys made it out, all our boys, which, if you know how impossible everyone's schedules are, is basically a miracle.
It was very sweet. You were glowing.
I don't glow, I radiate with quiet dignity.
Sure you do, honey. Okay, should we get back into it?
All right, let me take a deep breath and then let's do it.
Okay. So arrests happen in 2011. But getting arrested and getting convicted are two very different things, especially with a case this old.
40 plus years, witnesses have died, memories have faded, evidence has degraded.
Exactly. Michael Ferreira goes to trial first in January 2013, and here's a gut punch. He's found not guilty.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously. His defense basically tore apart the credibility of the confession testimony against him, argued the star witness had told police wildly different versions of the story over the years, which, to be fair, he had.
That's rough for the family. This is all rough for the family. You wait 40 years and one of the three walks?
And here's the part that gets me every time I read about this
Oh
case.
no.
Bill McCabe, John's dad, the one who kept the journal his whole life, he was in the courtroom for most of the trial, but he got sick near the very end, suffered a couple of heart attacks, and was hospitalized before the verdict even came in.
Oh God.
He died just days after the not guilty verdict. So after 42 years of pushing, waiting, calling police, writing everything down, he never actually got to see how any of it turned out.
You didn't even get the ending.
He didn't, and this is the detail that just guts me. He was buried right next to John.
Father and son together again after everything.
And it gets one more layer. Bill's wife, Evelyn, made him a promise before he passed that she'd see it through. That somebody would be held accountable. And a couple of months later, the DA's office went ahead with the second trial against Walter Shelley, using a lot of the same evidence.
Different results this time?
Different result. The jury believed Brown's testimony this time around, and in February 2014, Shelley was convicted of first-degree murder, sentenced to life.
So Evelyn got to see it, even though Bill didn't.
She did, and by every account, she went to visit his grave afterward to tell him.
Okay, that's, yeah, that's a lot.
It is. One more footnote, and then we can breathe. Because Shelley was 17 at the time of the crime, that conviction later got downgraded on
Huh.
appeal to second-degree murder, which means he's eligible for parole after 15 years.
So even the win has an asterisk on it,
And Brown, the one who confessed and testified, he took the manslaughter deal and avoided real prison time.
which I imagine did not sit great with everyone.
No, but without him coming forward, there's a real chance this case never gets solved at all. So it's messy. It's not a clean bow on top.
I want to also mention that we did a YouTube video a little bit back on the Classy Zombie 271 on YouTube about this case, and it contains Mr. McCabe, the father, Bill, his testimony. So if you get a chance, go back and take a look at that and hear a little bit more about the story and see some footage. Okay. We need a minute before we close this one out.
Agreed. Real quick, but before we forget, go check out those Whatnot auctions this week. Classy Zombie deals. We'll have more garage sales finds up. And no, the doll is not for sale.
She's not for sale yet, but everything else that isn't nailed down is fair game.
Accurate. Also, I've already started a list of things I need for Disney.
It's not for months.
Doesn't matter. I like being prepared. There's a spreadsheet.
Of course, there's a spreadsheet.
There's always a spreadsheet, Michael. That's how you know I'm serious.
Noted. Well, between the doll, the auction, and the spreadsheet, I think we're all set for a chaotic week.
A very good kind of chaotic. Okay, let's bring it home.
So, where does this leave us on the John McCabe case?
It leaves us with a case that technically has an ending, but not a clean one. One man walked free at trial. One man got convicted and then had those convictions quietly downgraded years later. And the father who spent his whole life chasing the truth died just days before any of it was decided.
That part's going to stay with me. Not the crime itself, honestly. The waiting. 42 years of waiting and then missing it by days.
What strikes me is that it wasn't the same genius detective moment that cracked this. It was persistence, a family that never stopped pushing, a detective willing to go back through an old file one more time, and eventually one person deciding to finally tell the truth.
And Bill, buried right next to his son, he spent his whole life fighting for.
That's the image I keep coming back to. It's not a twist ending, it's just grief and love refusing to quit even when it runs out of time.
That's a good place to land on this one.
I think so too. All right, before we lighten things back up, I actually want to sit with something for a second because I don't think we talk about it enough on this show.
The toll it takes. And this is really where our backgrounds come into this show. Honestly, I spent 32 years working as a clinician before I ever picked up a microphone. And Rose has been in the medical field for over 20 years and is currently a nurse practitioner. This part of the conversation isn't just armchair commentary for us.
It's really not. We tell these cases like stories, beginning, middle, and end, but for a real family, there's no tidy structure. Evelyn and Bill McCabe lived over 40 years not knowing what happened to their son. That's not a chapter, that's most of a lifetime, carrying grief never got to fully resolve because there was always a question mark sitting on top of it.
And Bill, in particular, the way he channeled it into that journal, into calling the police over and over. Clinically, that's a really recognizable pattern of unresolved grief and trauma. People find a way to hold on to some sense of control when the actual event was so far outside of their control. It's a coping mechanism, and honestly, a fairly adaptive one compared to a lot of the alternatives.
Right, and what he was living with has a name in the field: ambiguous loss, grief without clear answers or closure. It's recognized as one of the hardest forms of grief to carry, precisely because there's no clean endpoint to grieve toward. Families in cases like this often live with a kind of suspended mourning for years, sometimes decades.
And then when the truth finally does come out, it's not necessarily a relief either. Sometimes it reopens everything. In my 32 years, I saw that pattern more than once. People spend so long fighting for an answer that when it finally arrives, the body and mind don't always know what to do with it.
That's such a good point. Getting an answer after decades doesn't undo the decades, doesn't give Bill his years back or give the family the version of their life where this never happened at all.
It also makes me think about the detectives and even the jurors on the case like this. That's real weight to carry too, being the person who has to look at that evidence and make the call.
Absolutely. To be clear, we're speaking from our professional backgrounds about grief and trauma patterns broadly. We weren't treating this family, so we're not diagnosing any specific individual in this story. But it felt important to pause and say plainly, this wasn't just a mystery that got solved. It was decades of real, ongoing grief for a real family, and that deserves to be acknowledged, not just the whodunit part.
Well said. And if anything, in a case like this hits close to home for anyone listening, grief that doesn't have a clean resolution, loss you're still carrying, it's okay to reach out for support, whether that's a therapist, support group, or just someone you trust.
Agreed. Okay, let's shift gears for a second before we wrap up. We always like to tell you where we got our facts because we take that seriously on this show.
We're not just making this stuff up between coffee refills.
Mostly not. For this episode, a lot of the reporting came from CBS News and their 48 hours coverage of the case, which followed the McCabe family for years, including a piece called A Father's Search for Answers in Son's Cold Case Murder.
We also pulled from ABC News original reporting on the 2011 arrests and press releases straight from Middlesex District Attorney's Office on the trial outcomes.
Local coverage from the Tewksbury Patch filled in a lot of the community side of the story, how the town felt about it at the time, and later, Bill McCabe's obituary.
And for the case timeline and legal details, we leaned on Wikipedia's entry on the case, which is well sourced back to those original news reports.
So if you want to go deeper on any of this, all of that reporting is out there and worth reading.
We'll always tell you where we got it, and that's the deal. And also, I wanted to add that this case is hits close to home for us as well because we are less than 10 miles away from where all this occurred.
All right.
That's our show. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us today and tolerating my doll jokes and sitting with a genuinely tough story.
If you like this episode, follow, rate, review, leave us comments, all that good stuff. It actually helps a ridiculous amount.
And don't forget to catch our Whatnot auctions this week, the Classy Zombie Deals, and also on YouTube, the Classy Zombie 271.
Come find out what else came home with us from that garage sale.
On that note,
I'm Rose,
I'm Michael.
and this has
It's
been the
been
Classy
Classy Zombie.
Zombie.
See you next week. Stay
Stay
creepy.
creepy.